So Anthem put out a big patch a couple of hours ago. We'll sort of go over what's in the patch notes shortly, but again, around this there were some changes to loot which were accidental, caused a lot of problems, were reverted, and really pissed off the community again. We'll be going over that, the problem with that system and why it's really frustrating to be part of it. I know people sort of defend Masterworks should be dropping all the time, but I will talk about why that's important for Anthem to have regular loot drops. Yes, I'm going back on what I said before. As I said, we'll go over the patch notes, at least the most important stuff, the major changes that you need to see, and also the new Masterworks that are in the game. We'll highlight those first. My name is Ryan Central, you can subscribe for more Anthem content, and as I said, we will start with the new components. These new Masterworks are universal components, meaning that you can run these on any of the javelins that you want. From what I can tell, there is 4 in the game, sort of looking for the Anthem subreddit and also trying to get these myself, and everybody I know getting these, it seems to only be 4 added in at this given point. We could go over exactly what they are now. The first is Softened Blows, which its initial perk is it increases javelin shields by a large amount. It also increases damage resistance by 75% for 5 seconds when your shield runs out, which I actually think is a really good universal component. All of the universal components in comparison to Interceptor specific components like Elusive Talisman on the right hand side here, they tend to have better inscriptions around damage. As you can see, the Softened Blows does have inscriptions for damage, whereas the Elusive Talisman doesn't. Next one is Emergency Power, an inscribed component that augments Javelin ultimate gear and increases damage by 30% of base damage. I believe that means that the ultimate damage has been increased by 30%, but I honestly don't know, it's worded so poorly. And the Masterwork perk is that ultimate meter refills instantly when your armor is critically damaged. Can occur once every 2 minutes. I got this one and it's amazing. It's actually really good for stuff like ranger builds where you have your ultimate quite frequently and you want to just be spamming it as much as possible. Really good for the Interceptor too, where you can make melee ultimate acid builds with it. That's what I've been running with the gameplay in the background, and I honestly really like this one. You do risk having less armor and less shields, but I think that this is a nice perk to back you up because of course using your ultimate does make you invulnerable and also heals you fully. Thermal Cooling increases the javelin heat capacity by 50% of the base capacity to allow the javelin to fly more effectively, so you can fly a lot longer. But it also reduces time that you stay overheated significantly. Kind of a meh one here, but if you're building like a storm build that requires you to hover quite a lot, the base stat here is quite good, and also depending on inscriptions too. And finally, Rejuvenating Ammo increases reserve ammo for all equipped guns by 30% of base capacity, and it also replenishes armor by 20% when picking up an ammo pack. So if you're running some form of shotgun build with a ranger or interceptor, or like a melee interceptor build, I could definitely see this working. These are all sort of based to sort of keep you alive and in a lot of tight situations perhaps, so built more around utility as opposed to specific elements, because of course these are universal. I know some people may not be interested in those, but I did want to highlight those as like a silver lining because the next stuff is kind of frustrating, very much so. As I mentioned today, Anthem put out a pretty big patch with a lot of bug fixes, patch notes in the description if you want to check it yourself, but we'll go over the main ones later. But there was a hotfix that came out about 12 hours ago, or like 14 hours ago from this video going out. Something changed in the 8 hours between the hotfix and the patch actually going live that increased the loot drop for Masterworks and Legendaries, effectively doubling it. Here are a few Reddit posts sort of highlighting this. By the way, whatever you've done to the loot, intentional or not, do not revert it. Spoiler alert, they reverted it. A post earlier just saying this game is fun with a picture of 4 Masterworks dropping. If there was a hidden buff, thank you BioWare. And here are a few more examples of people saying, hey, the Masterwork legendary drop is quite good now, the game is a lot of fun. Of course, we had this problem last time because, again, Anthem had its loot drop rate increased, and then they turned around and said it was actually a bug. We're going to revert it back to normal. And of course, that whiplash frustrated a lot of players, and of course, they've done it now. And the issue is that this has happened a second time, and as they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, and that's how a lot of the community feel. Even a person like myself that was sort of defending BioWare in a lot of cases, I'm left incredibly frustrated at the state of the game, and most importantly, I don't want to play it right now. I saw the changes this morning, I knew that the patch was coming, I was excited to play the game, to stream it, whatever. Then I saw that the loot drop rate was increased. I was incredibly excited to play it. So much so that I logged on to try out stuff for a couple of hours when the patch initially went live, but I soon quickly noticed that the drop rate wasn't anything to shout about. On average, it was a little bit better. That might be some change that's in there. It might have just been RNG on my side. But ultimately, I was kind of going, I'm not getting the drop rates of everybody else. That's when I went onto Reddit and saw that everybody else was saying the loot drop rate has gone back to normal. What makes this even worse is that it's a weekend now, so there's going to be a chance that like the main developers are going to be sort of away, taking some time off because it's the weekend. And now the community are complaining and want to hear them respond to stuff, right? So the fact that they put this patch out on a Friday was probably not a good idea in the grand scheme of things, because if it came out on a Tuesday, they'd be at work on a Wednesday and Thursday, right? And whilst I do think that the developers are working incredibly hard to steer the ship back to where it should be going with Anthem, the devs are only human. So I certainly feel very sorry for them to be able to deal with this problem at the moment. But I guess the main thing that I can be brutally honest about is that I don't really want to play Anthem right now, just because these changes just affect the scaling of the game as a whole. When you have a period of time where people are getting more drops than you, and then when you play, you log in and you're not getting as much, of course that's incredibly frustrating. And also you don't know if BioWare are going to revert it back up to what it was. With any luck they do, but there's a strong chance that they will stay with their opinion that they have at the moment, that loot drops are fine and okay. To now talk about the element of people saying, well, if the loot drops were a lot higher, that means that you'll just get all of your best in slot gear and run it, have your god rolls within a week, you can stop playing. But the issue is, that's not true. Inscriptions on gear is notably quite bad. For the most part anyway, like you will get a masterwork piece that you want, an item, an ability, a component that you've been searching for, but the chances that you will take that and you will use that regardless of the inscriptions on it. But now myself, as well as other people, are getting duplicates of abilities and weapons and components that we have already, and that's fine. A lot of the time you just sort of disenchant them, you just craft them into something new. You check the inscriptions, you either replace the one that you had before, or you just get rid of it. The issue is that still happens regardless of the loot drop rate or not. In fact, at this point, I think the majority of people have got all of the Masterworks that they kinda want at this point. To sum it up really quickly, to give an example, you're playing a game for 2 hours and you get 12 Masterworks with the increased loot drop rate. There's still a good chance that 90% of those, 10 to 11 of those Masterwork items that you get are going to be rubbish and you're not going to use them. But that upgrade will be fine and you can replace it. It's not great, but it's a lot better than getting 3 to 4 Masterworks in 2 hours. And again, a good portion of them not being upgrades, being bad and stuff that you don't want. I would much rather have 12 Masterworks, 11 of which I'm not going to use, than 4 Masterworks, 3 of which I'm not going to use. It's all about the science behind it, the dopamine rush that you get when you see a Masterwork or Legendary drop. And there's definitely a connection of players having more fun when they're getting more loot. There's no doubt in my mind that that's the case. Of course it is, it's obvious. But I really don't believe that increasing loot is going to decrease longevity of the game, because it goes from getting any gear that you can that's an upgrade to getting the absolute best in slot rolls that you can get. It's all based on RNG, and considering the RNG of inscriptions is kind of bad right now, I'm still okay with that. But without rambling on too much about this sort of situation, there's only so much that this community is going to take, and I'm pretty sure that they've taken a fair amount already early on into Anthem's lifespan. It's not even been a month yet, even for early access users, and players are left frustrated. And it wouldn't surprise me if people just quit and stop playing the game at this point. I'm not going to be dramatic and say that that's what I'm doing, but I'm certainly going to do something else tonight. Point I'm trying to make is that when stuff like this happens in Anthem that fundamentally ruins the progression and looting experience, then that's not good. The game cycle of Anthem is really fun, the mechanics of playing in missions is great, but everything around it right now is really suffering, but it feels that more problems are being caused than solved when patches like this come out. Now we've gone over the doom and gloom, let's go over the patch notes and specifically highlight major areas. High level fixes and changes, respawn restrictions have been removed. When you get downed for 30 seconds and then you can respawn, whereas before you couldn't do that at all. This is typically used in even like stronghold bosses, you can still do this. Loot changes, commons and uncommons will no longer appear for players at a level 30. It's a nice change, just sort of clears up stuff that's going on at the moment, but considering all of the stuff that we went over, loot is still not in a really good spot, or at least not in a spot as good as it should be. Audio improvements, audio will drop out because of the Frostbite engine, that seems to have fixed a number of issues there, and also stability on all platforms, including crashes on PS4 and stuff like that. It's generally a lot better. Next up, Titans have been nerfed to an extent. They've reduced the Titans' damage mitigation, increased the damage that Titans take from weak point hits. Generally, it's just a lot easier to kill them. We can sum it up like that. We don't need to go over every single point. The Monitor's health also in Heart of Rage has greatly been reduced. I haven't played it on GM1 just yet, but I have heard people clearing it in like 12 minutes. So it's a lot easier now than it was before. Players are less likely to be repeatedly staggered by heavy attacks, meaning that you're not just going to get chain stunned by mobs like the Luminaries, for example, and Skelos with their like homing rockets that hit you, and they will continually stun you until you die, basically, unless you manage to dash out of there. One of the biggest changes that they also did was to damage and item scaling. Melees, combos, ultimates, and status effects are all a lot more prominent than they used to be because they changed the number on gear. I'm not specifically sure how it all works, but it increased the gear score of legendaries, for example, from 47 to 75. Because of that, it's allowed melee, combos, and ultimates to scale a lot more appropriately as you're heading into harder content. Because what it would mean is if you go into GM2 and GM3, your weapons and your abilities might do a lot of damage. Your melees wouldn't, your ultimates wouldn't, and combos wouldn't either. So if you're playing a ranger, all of these areas were incredibly weak in comparison to other people. Now, they're a little bit too strong. Played in GM1 with an interceptor melee build, I am one-shotting people with melee strikes, as you've seen in the gameplay in the background. It's incredibly strong, even taking that into GM2, which it didn't work in before, is also probably now the best build that you can have as the interceptor. So if you like melee builds, if you like combo builds and ultimate builds, you're going to have a lot more fun because these are a lot stronger, including some of the weapons, which I'm about to highlight, were increased in damage, the ones on screen. I won't read them out, you can sort of have a look yourself and see if your best in slot weapon is there. They fixed a few more inscriptions and weapon procs and other bits of pieces that I didn't really want to highlight here. You can check out the full thing in the description below. This video has left me very frustrated to make, even to the point that I wasn't even sure if I wanted to make this video in the first place, which as a content creator is not a really good feeling. There's definitely a voice at the back of your head that's saying, why are you doing this, please stop. I don't know what the future holds for Anthem. For me, I'm just going to make as much content as I can on it before I just can't anymore. But it's certainly already teetering on the edge. A month in, nobody should be feeling as bad as this. It's a big ask for the developers to turn this around. I firmly believe that they have the intentions and the ability to do so, but when they add in a patch that's meant to fix 300 bug fixes and make the game a lot more stable, whilst also indirectly ruining the gameplay experience by increasing the loot rate and then dropping it, it makes you wonder if they can turn this around, because it seems to be causing more problems than it's worth. Let me know what you think of all this. Maybe I was a fool to do this all along, but I'm going to still grind with this game. I'm still going to believe that it can be turned into something amazing. The premise is there, but let's see what else can be done. I hope you enjoyed this video, found it insightful. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.